After a hot start with Michael Pezzetta opening the scoring early, the Habs end up getting crushed by the Carolina Hurricanes. Some really bad transition defense and bad play from one defenseman in particular kind of ruined the night, but we got a Raphael Harvey-Pinard goal. We'll be talking about all that and much more in this edition of Habs Digest. Hello, bonjour, ahoy, and welcome to today's game reaction edition of Habs Digest. I'm your host, Josh Gosse, alongside my co-host, Jesse Poirier. Quick reminder, guys, we are like, 10 subs away, 15 subs away from 4,000? Hit the button now, please, if you're watching this video. Just look at it. Is it red? Click it, please. 4,000, we know you guys can help us. Jesse, let's get into this game. I mean, even before the game, we knew this might be a rough one. We know Xhekaj is out indefinitely, unfortunately. Of course, we have all the injuries to the likes of Slavkovsky, Caulfield, blah, 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 down the line. And before puck drop tonight, we learned that Kirby Dach is out with a non-COVID illness. Coming into this game, we didn't really have the highest of expectations, especially against a team like Carolina, who is no joke. Like, they're not a joke of a team. They're going to be one of the contenders for the Stanley Cup. But I thought Montreal got off to a good start, Jesse, with that Michael Pezzetta goal. I mean, did you see something maybe early in that period? We saw some of that life from the last few games before things started to go downhill?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's face it, even though being badly outshot, we were still in this game, coming into that third period. And that's where the wheels came off. And that's where, the likes of, having a lot of these injuries really comes into play, because a lot of these players are having to play a lot more minutes than they're used to playing in order to step up for them. And for myself, I was really missing Xhekaj tonight. What about you, Josh?
Oh, for sure. Some of the physicality. Carolina, I won't say they got chippy, but they were getting fairly physical, trying to toss the Montreal guys around, and just having a guy like Xhekaj who can step up and level someone coming into the zone. That could have set a good precedent tonight. But, Jesse, one thing you mentioned that I think is very important is that we had a lot of line mix-ups tonight, right? The forward lines were a bit strange. The defensive pairings were out of whack. And that led to some really, really poor transition defense, and we really saw that in the first period with basically both of Carolina's goals. The first one, Jesperi Kotkaniemi coming in on a 2-on-1. It felt like every second possession, Carolina was just firing the puck up the middle of the ice as Montreal was caught on a bad change. Jesse, I know this. I know I just said, like, part of that is probably because of the, the lines getting mixed up and so on and so forth, but at the NHL level, like, it just feels like that shouldn't be acceptable, right? Like, I know Montreal, we're not planning to win or anything, but do you think that's something that maybe should get, or will get addressed in the locker room from Martin St. Louis after this game, well, I guess after he chats with the team after this game?
I think so, just because you don't want to be allowing those easy opportunities. We know that Wideman, since the beginning of the season, he's hasn't been in the lineup as much. For myself, I thought he was just leaving a little bit too much room on Kotkaniemi's goal, right? Yeah. Where he's kind of guarding the 2-on-1, but he's kind of staying on his man and just giving him too much room, essentially just, like giving Kotkaniemi a breakaway. So a little bit rough there, and kind of our night defensively in a rough shell. The wheels kind of just came off there in the third.
Yeah, it was really just the third, you're right, though, because even though we were down 2-1 after the first, I mean, the second period was a lot better, especially defensively. Montreal was keeping Carolina to the outside a little bit better. They were playing the puck a bit more, and I thought the forecheck even was a bit better. They weren't allowing Carolina these easy, 60, 70-foot passes up the ice. But Montreal in the second period, too, managed to show some life. Their first power play, they couldn't quite get it going, but it was their second power play of the period late in the second when things started to click. It was a bit of a mix between the first and second power play, but Jesse, our boy, Raphael Harvey-Pinard, the guy in the thumbnail, the guy that everyone loves to talk about, scored his 7th of the season in just his 11th game off a feed from Mike Hoffman. I mean, I feel like we talk about him almost every video, Jesse, but him and Michael Pezzetta were the two of the very few bright spots for Montreal tonight. Jesse, we've kind of talked about Harvey-Pinard being in the right place at the right time and a lot of goals, but tonight, yeah, he was in the right place, but he used some smarts to really open up a passing lane for Hoffman. I mean, I'm just going to ask this question again. I ask it every video. Maybe we'll make it a tradition. How impressed are you with his play that seemingly is just getting better and better the more he plays in the NHL? Is he just one of those guys that thrives at a higher level of competition while playing around better players?
Absolutely, and what I like is he's such a skilled player, showing kind of finishing off that sort of tic-tac-toe play, which, by the way, really nice no-look pass from Hoffman to kind of set him up on that. But what I like is that he also has that feistiness to his game as well, Josh. And you saw at one point, as you mentioned, it was a little bit chippy, right, with the Hurricanes tonight. A little bit of a rough game. I could see definitely a little bit more of a rivalry sort of building there maybe in years to come. But You saw Andrei Svechnikov, who was playing a very chippy game for the Hurricanes as well, was kind of in a little bit of a battle with Harvey-Pinard, kind of going for a puck. Both of them kind of have their sticks up, at each other. And, it was just so nice to see Harvey-Pinard win that battle.
Yeah.
It's just kind of those small victories on tonight that you're kind of looking for. But all that being said is, you got to be so happy for him because everybody's waiting for it to stop. Like it's just some sort of fluke. But every game when he just continues to do this, he's just solidifying himself further and further as an NHL player, which has to be so great for him. And it's great for us to see as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's a phenomenon. Like, I don't know what's going on, but he has just stepped up in every way possible. His passes, one thing I noticed with him is his passes in the offensive zone. He doesn't need to pass a ton, obviously. It's not like he has the puck on his stick that much other than when he's forechecking, but there were some passes tonight where he would just steal a puck off of a forecheck and a no-look drop pass to someone like Anderson streaking down the wing. It's like, this guy's game sense is through the roof, and I feel like that's an underrated part of a lot of players' games, and it's what's allowing him to really be in the correct spots to be able to capitalize. So awesome for Harvey-Pinard. But Jesse, as we said, that third period fell apart quickly. It was all Carolina early. They had a sick goal where Brent Burns dangled about 4 Habs before Seth Jarvis managed to pot it home. But the brutal defense from the first is where the second period was Montreal's best period of the game. That's been a theme a lot of this season as well. But the brutal defense came back in the third where they were allowing these long passes from Carolina. Transition defense was terrible. And Jesse, to cap it all off, late in the third period, Chris Wideman played maybe bottom 5 games I've ever seen played from an NHL level player, and we've seen some pretty bad players play for Montreal over the years. That was not a great performance from Wideman, especially in that third period. Not going to stay on him too much, but of course he took a penalty late in the game, and what ends up happening with about a minute left, Seth Jarvis, I'm not sure if it was on that Wideman penalty, but regardless, Jarvis gets a short-handed breakaway with about a minute left in the game to just cap it off. I sort of asked you about the line changes, but defensive effort. I know it's tough for this Montreal team, especially with so many injuries, so many mix-ups on the defensive pairings, Jesse. But did you feel like there was a lack of effort, especially as Carolina got out to maybe a bigger lead in the third? Do you feel like they could have maybe stepped up and tried to close the game a bit harder, or am I just being a little too cynical here?
It was some very skilled goals, like we said. Brent Burns kind of dangling 4 people. There's very few defensemen in the league that can do that. So I'm going to chalk it up to just a little bit of bad luck. I think Monty kind of wishes his rebound control was maybe a little bit better tonight. But again, we're not going to dog on him too much. He's been having a great year and everything like that. And I think it's normal for a young team sometimes to have, some games like this. It always kind of hurts when, Kotkaniemi's on the other side, and even though he's playing all right, still I wouldn't take that contract. But, I think at the same time, the positive takeaway is we got some young guns that are really stepping up. We've seen a lot of our trade assets that we want to then turn, for our futures as well, really step up, like Drouin, like Hoffman, which leads me to my next question, Josh. If we were to trade Hoffman at the deadline, what do you think that we would get back for him?
That's tough. I feel like most teams would be unlikely to trade a reasonable prospect for Hoffman. Like, I feel like they wouldn't want to trade a guy who projects to be a solid NHLer for Hoffman. What I could see is maybe make the salaries match, because that's going to need to be something. Let's say Montreal retains half, and what is he on, a $4-point-something million contract? Say Montreal retains about 2. They got to match about $2 million in salary, so you get maybe an extra forward back for Hoffman, maybe a slightly younger guy on a slightly longer deal or something. I'm not sure. Someone another team wants to dump. But more realistically, if they don't even get a player, I'm guessing somewhere maybe around a 4th-round pick, maybe 3rd, because Hoffman in the right situation can be sort of a power play weapon exclusive, if that makes sense. Like, not a ton of 5-on-5 time, but you give him a lot of special teams, and you see if he can put in some work to get you goals in the playoff run. So, yeah, maybe like a 3rd, 4th-round pick, and maybe a guy who can fill in for a handful of games at a level a little bit below what Hoffman is now, maybe a bottom 6 kind of guy. Do you think I'm a bit off base there, or what are your thoughts?
It's interesting. It'll be. I think we'll probably keep him. I could see him more being dealt on the offseason to get a little bit more value. I think more likely, probably at this time, is it's probably somebody. They're looking for more of a playoff type player. Like right now, So I think if I'm another team looking at the Montreal Canadiens, I'm looking at Savard, who has that playoff experience with the Lightning. And I'm also looking at Edmondson. So another quick hitter here. Savard, Edmondson, who would you keep out of those two?
I would
at trade deadline.
Oh boy. Just for if I'm just considering the player, probably Savard, but by all accounts, Edmondson is one of the main leaders in the locker room. And again, he has a better sort of playoff style of hockey, but I feel like neither of these guys will be on the team once their sort of eventual playoff window opens. But if we're talking strictly this year, I personally like watching David Savard a bit more. I think his defensive ability is so crucial to this team that lacks a lot of good defenders in general. I would rather keep Savard and trade Edmondson. What are your thoughts?
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I would have to agree. And a year ago, I wouldn't have said the same thing. I would have said Edmondson for sure over Savard. But I think we've just seen a revelation from Savard this year. Just blocking so many shots. Making great offensive, pinches when it's the time. We saw the other night with just a beauty wrister, 1 foot up in the air. So he's really shown it's a little bit more to his game. I know that Edmondson's had a little bit of a rough year so far with injuries. So I think that that's definitely a big factor in all of this. But for me right now, a trade deadline, if I have to keep one of those players, I'd probably be trading Edmondson, keeping Savard.
That's kind of crazy that we're saying that, right? Like you said, after last year, Savard, everyone wanted his head. Everyone wanted him out of Montreal. But no, like you said, he's bounced back. He's been a real solid player this season. The last season, he made a ton of unforced errors. This season, not so much. And his the way he's been able to step up defensively is amazing. And sort of on that note, Jesse, so one of the last things I want to mention here tonight is some of the other good performances that I saw from Habs tonight. We mentioned a bit Mike Hoffman. I thought overall his game was quite good today. He had a few decent defensive plays. He had a really cool pass as well. It was the Belzile, Dadonov, Hoffman line for a bit out there, and Belzile gives it down to the goal line to Hoffman, who just takes his stick, one hand, like a one-touch poke check pass to Dadonov streaking to the front of the net, and Dadonov could have easily put that puck in the back of the net. Unfortunately, Ranta, who had a great game tonight, made the save. But also Jonathan Drouin, he has continued, although I don't think he put up a point tonight, he has continued to impress over his last little while. Jesse, are you coming around a little bit maybe on the train of keeping Drouin around if he settles at maybe a $1 or $2 million contract?
Absolutely not. I think he needs a fresh start. I just think it's better for the team. I think it's better for the player, and nothing against him personally. I'm super happy to see him, see an uptick in his game and everything else like that. I just think we're going to trade him to another team, and you're just going to see him flourish from there. But, I think it'll be a good fresh start.
Yeah, I think so too. We've kind of discussed this a lot before. Despite the recent performance, I think it'd be great for him to thrive somewhere else. I'd love to see it. But right now, I think his time is about done in Montreal. Maybe they can get someone for him at the trade deadline, especially with this recent spike in performance. Maybe some team will get what ends up being a nice bargain for him. But that'll do it for this game reaction edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Help us get to 4,000, 5,000 subscribers and beyond. We know you guys can help us out. I'm Josh Gosse for my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.